What is the scariest thing you have seen? I was 14 years old and getting ready for school one morning. Nothing out of the usual. Whenever I went downstairs to my kitchen, I found my dad slumped on the kitchen floor. I yell. He doesn't respond. I start shaking him for a minute and still nothing. I go to get my mom. She comes out and also yells. As she was preparing to call 911, he finally gets up. Luckily for us, he had recently started a new medication that made him extremely tired. Apparently he fell asleep while making coffee. He is still with us to this day. But that memory always scares me. I got mugged once, so I'd say my mugger. I remember his face very clearly. He stabbed me once on the side of my torso and I had to go to therapy for it. My brother coming home almost naked and beaten up. Some Albanians had jumped him, stripped him and ganged up on him over some girl. Apparently, the fact that he was beaten up wasn't so scary, but he was naked. My mind immediately jumped to worse stuff. This winter I was driving a trailer with 2 horses from NY to FL. The day before it had just snowed about 8 inches or so. On the highway there was a massive big rig in front of me and I see this huge slab of ice fly off the top of the trailer. It was this enormous piece. Looked at least 5 feet by 5 feet and a few inches thick of just solid ice. The way it flew off the top of the trailer, it caught some wind underneath and went up even higher. I immediately knew that this piece was going to come down directly onto my windshield. The highway was full of cars, so swerving to avoid the ice wasn't an option, and being that I was carrying horses and pulling a trailer, a sudden movement would risk me losing control. I sat there staring at this huge piece of ice, knowing in a few seconds it would come crashing down onto my windshield. I just hoped for the best and hoped it wouldn't smash through it. My brother was sleeping in the back, and when it hit, it made one of the loudest noises I've ever heard, immediately waking him up. Luckily it didn't shatter the windshield. It did, however, rip off the side mirror on the left side of the car. It was very scary and I consider myself very lucky that it didn't end up way worse. Was backpacking in Sydney. Got a job helping renovate a guy's house. Walking out of the garage one day and something like dust or plaster falls on the back of my neck. I swipe it off. It hits the floor and starts fucking moving. First instinct is to crush it, which I'm glad I did. Was a redback spider that had been on my fucking neck. Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Literally hundreds of flying termites in my room. I saw a bear on a hiking trail. If there's no fence between you and something that can eat you. This one time, my dad, my godfather and I were all shooting. My dad prefers 40 or 45 cal in a pistol, which is what we were shooting, but my godfather had a 9mm. We had empty soda cans for targets and we just set them on the ground and shot at them. My godfather pulls out his 9mm and shot a couple magazines out of it and told my dad to try it. Well, my dad sets up his target in front of some tall grass. Not thinking to check to see if anything was behind it, he walks back about 20 yards or so, turns around and takes aim. He shot once, shot twice, and the third shot bounced off of a railroad tie behind the grass. Came straight back and hit him in the orbital, the bony structure around your eye, picks him up, spins him around and he just slumped there. And I shit you not, there was about 3 seconds of deafening silence where I thought I had just lost my dad. 3 agonizing, eternal seconds. He jumps up and starts cussing like I've never seen him cuss before. F*** this piece of shish mother ************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************ asterisk 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 eyeball busted? Quote, needless to say, I was sitting there crying like a baby back b asterisk 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 asterisk. I was still a pretty young boy, like 10 or 11 at the time, and completely frozen. As it happened, everyone was fine. Nobody got seriously injured, and my dad's eye was fine. There was a small bone chip they had to remove, but he was otherwise fine except for some bruising on his eye and his ego. And that was the most scared I have ever been in my entire life. My Phil's neck squirting blood after just being hit with shrapnel that blew back at a shooting range. Scariest 20 minutes while multiple 911 calls dropped and I frantically tried to figure out where we were to get EMTs on their way. Lesson: always pay attention to where you're going even as a passenger. Barely missed any major arteries and he's totally fine now. Husband asked the other day if I wanted to go shooting with him. I just shook my head. I'm good. A few years ago my family and I lived in a house with a rather large basement. Our basement had a door which led to a smaller room where my dad mainly kept his tools. When I was about 16 I went downstairs to get a textbook because I was working on a science project. This was about at 3 a.m. I went downstairs and turned the light on. While I was halfway down the stairs, the doorknob on the door which led to a smaller room started violently shaking. Whoever was trying to open the door couldn't because the door was unlocked. Then they banged on the door one time and stopped. I thought it could have my brother or dad who probably got stuck in there, so I wanted to go check. But just in case, I went back upstairs to pick up my dad's hunting rifle. With my heart beating out of my chest, I opened the door and no one was there. This is impossible because there is no other way out of the small door other than that door. And even if the person who was violently shaking the doorknob opened the door and left, I would have seen him, her, while I was upstairs grabbing the rifle. My parents dismissed it as me hallucinating, but I know what I saw. Thankfully we moved out a while back. By far the scariest moment of my life. My young daughter running across the road before anyone had looked either direction. A few years ago my brother and I were going for a walk when a couple 100 feet ahead of us we saw this white animal head peeking up over a bush staring at us. It was evening and the sun was going down, so it was hard to tell exactly what it was. It slowly sunk behind the bush, so we crossed to the other side of the street and walked on that side. Once we were across the street from the bush, that was maybe another 15 feet up the hill, its head popped up again and was staring at us. It was white like an albino something. I knew I wasn't seeing things because my brother saw it too, and we heard it make a sound. Kinda like a whimpering yippee bark type sound. Didn't sound natural. It slowly rose up above the bush, its long slender white body standing there while it kept staring at us. Had to have been maybe 4 to 5 feet long, less than a foot wide, very thin. It was getting darker so we couldn't make out what it was. Now the weird part, its body started wiggling, waving. Not sure how to describe it. In the most perfect yet unnatural way I have ever seen. Like if you hold up a long noodle and wiggle it almost. It was the most unnatural and weirdest thing I've seen. It was the first time in my life I had seen something that actually made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up and sent chills down my spine. I've never gotten such a weird and eerie vibe like that before. We slowly walked backwards and went back home as it continued shaking. Unsure if it was dangerous or not. Definitely the weirdest, scariest thing that's happened. Edit. We're located in central US. Also, when I said it was 4 to 5 feet tall, that's how much of it we saw over the bush. And the bush itself was probably 3 to 4 feet tall. Based on the 4 to 5 feet of it that we could see over the bush, there were no visible legs. And the way it wiggled was such a fluid motion. It didn't look like something any animal could do, if that makes sense. TL. Doctor saw a maybe 7 to 8-ish foot slender albino alien on a walk. Driving down the street approaching a freeway overpass and see a tanker crashing into the bridge and exploding on the overpass. I stop about 5 feet from the flames and can't back up because the traffic behind me. I jumped out and ran. My mother's husband coming at me with a machete trying to kill me. I stumbled and fell. It's not a silly horror movie trope. It happens. I still hear the sound of it hitting the floor inches away from my feet as I scrambled backwards. Did you know that machetes make sparks when they hit hard surfaces? Edit bad spelling. I was traumatized last night, so I wake up at about 4 a.m. to my hand wiping something off my face. I must have instinctively done this and the action itself woke me. I hear a small tap as whatever it was fell to the floor. I'm still half asleep and think to myself, for some crazy reason, it must have been food stuck to my face from making broth before going to bed. Like a bay leaf. And try to go back to sleep. I can't though because now that I'm awake I have to pee. So I go and also check my face for food. Nothing is there. Odd. I wash my face. Slowly I realize as I become more awake that it couldn't have been food because I washed my face before bed. I go back up to bed and get my phone to use as a flashlight. Dread slowly filling me to see what it was. I shine the light on the floor and there it is. The house centipede about 2 inches long with a gazillion legs. It then starts skittering and I yell obscenities repeatedly. I grab my house slipper and smash it before it can go somewhere unseen. After 3 attempts I succeeded. I then start inspecting the entire room. I pull the covers down and check under my pillow to see if there are more. No, thank God. I rip the covers off my unsuspecting husband. But he was in the clear as well and remained completely undisturbed and oblivious. I checked the slanted ceiling because I suspect it was climbing on there and fell on my face. The thought that it actually crawled up my bed, over my hair, across my forehead is too terrifying to consider. With no indication that there were any others, I try to go back to sleep, clutching my phone and checking the ceiling with a flashlight every few minutes. I eventually fell asleep a good hour or so later. But it wasn't a restful one. I constantly felt the need to wipe my face to feel safe. I have since learned, thank you Google, that they actually aren't dangerous to humans. Don't even really ever bite us. Actually, they eat other pests like roaches, silverfish, and wasps that may be in your home. While that is great, they are extremely creepy and I don't appreciate their services in my bedroom whilst I am sleeping. Are their company in my bed? That one has died for its transgressions against my house and so will all others who dare show their presence. Be warned. Thank you for listening to my rant. Have a great day. TLDR. A centipede fell on my face while I was sleeping, which resulted in one of my scariest experiences. Happened to me today. I probably shouldn't be browsing Reddit, but it's getting late and I need to get my mind off things. My son having 3 seizures in the space of about 20 minutes. Doctors think it's a viral infection, but CT scan came back fine, so no damage or neurological issues with the brain so far. Now he's sleeping waiting for results from bloods and other tests they did. I've got a long night of sitting with beeps going gee off and nurses and doctors around. So yeah, my son had those seizures in the moments after when he was mumbling and drooling and couldn't speak, literally thought he was dead or going to have serious brain damage. Scariest thing I've seen, broke my heart. A few hours later he's chatting to the nurses being cheeky as fuck. My daughter, at 8 months old, in an ICU connected to several tubes, screaming in pain, followed by a doctor telling us she needs chemotherapy. We were transferred to the oncology department of a children's hospital, the most depressing place in the world. A few days later they told us it was a misdiagnosis, and that she was responding well to antibiotics. She had some rare flesh-eating virus that created sores, and once they opened her blood was infected, which made her blood count super low. Normally the white blood cell count is 4,000, 7,000. Minimum healthy is 1,500. She had 70. Also, when the sores started to heal, the infected area just sort of fell out while I was giving her a bath. Scared the hell out of me. It wasn't a large area. The nurses calmed me down and explained that her body is rejecting the infection. After 2 weeks we were released, all good. She's 5 years old now. Nothing but a couple of barely visible scars left where the sores were. They're not anywhere noticeable either. She's really strong for a 5-year-old. Often when I come home from work she runs up to me, jumps and hugs me, latching on, pulling herself up, and before I know what's happening she's already on my shoulders, without me helping her or picking her up. Warning, this is disturbing. This still haunts me to this day. Me and a buddy of mine went down this trail on our dirt bikes. We just got off the trail and headed back down the twisty road. We were having fun around the corners until we saw a cyclist walking down the road. At least that's what we assumed that he is, judging from his gear. Me and my buddy both felt bad for the poor sap since we thought some punk stole his bicycle from him or something. So we pulled off to the side of the road. I noticed that his left thigh is bleeding profusely, as we could see a big gash and could almost see the bone. We told him to sit down, and I took out my extra shirt from my backpack and wrapped it around his thigh while my buddy called for an ambulance. I kept asking the dude's name, but he wasn't talking properly, so I just assumed that he is in a lot of pain and is going through shock. I had first aid training, so I keep asking him what was his name. He never answered since the whole time I was talking to him he was looking straight along the road. 5 minutes later he told me to go check on his brother. I was wondering who he was referring to since he was the only cyclist we found, so I told him, "What's his number? Let me call him for you." He looked at me dead in the eyes and said, "He went down the ravine." Out of panic I stood up and looked around. Sure enough, about 10 feet away I saw 2 broken bicycles that crashed on the metal barrier. I rushed to the scene and looked below the ravine, and there I saw a man, mangled beyond recognition. His spine was twisted to the left, and his head twisted to the right. His eyes fixed on mine as I hear him whisper, "Help," and his eyes rolled onto the top of his eyelids. Ambulance arrived. The guy on the ravine died, while the brother who had a broken leg survived. I never forgot their faces. To this day on, I always tell myself that all of that was just a dream. My buddy still has those pictures taken from his GoPro camera. This happened just a year ago.